Hello and welcome to Sunny with a Chance of Chaos, the podcast that is equal parts optimistic and realistic. Join me as we navigate the ups and downs that everyday life brings. I'm Lindsay and I'm so glad you're here. So get a coffee, get comfy, and get ready for a little bit of life's chaos. Hey there, welcome back. I hope your AirPods are in. I hope you're walking your dog or driving somewhere or folding laundry, whatever it is that you're doing, and I get to keep you company. This is such an honor. It's a huge gift and it's a privilege, and I'm so grateful for you for putting me in your ear today. In other news, this is the second last episode of season 1. I'm going to go to 15 and then I'm going to take a little break. So this being episode 14, I'll do one more and then we'll see what happens after that. I'm just so grateful that you got this far with me. I can't even believe I did 5 episodes, let alone 15. So it's exciting and I'm so glad you're here. So this week, people often talk about doing the work. And here in this context by work, I mean like personal work, internal work on yourself, mentally and emotionally. I often find myself talking about doing the work. I'm using like hard air quotes here, engaging in the work and seeking resources for the work. And sometimes it feels like there's always another thing to be working on. It's tiring, yes. And also, it's super necessary. So what does it mean to be doing the work? When do we have to do the work? Why do we have to do the work? How do we know the work is worth it? In this episode, I want to answer a lot of these questions, not just for you, but for me too. I spend a lot of time in the work and I want to know that my efforts are worth it. A while back, I found myself single again, having just extricated myself from a 1-year relationship. I was readjusting to single life once again. My best friend and neighbor, S, who I've referred to once or twice already in previous episodes, she is a key player in my sunshine chaos balance. She invited me over to hang out by the fire with her husband, who is also a very good friend of mine. They wanted to check in and see how I was doing. They pacified me with some chocolate and a stiff drink. It was fabulous. As good friends tend to do, they asked how I was with genuine curiosity and empathy. And I told them the truth. I was actually doing really well. Like I was fine. And I continued by explaining that I was going to be okay because I was digging in and doing the work. Again, I was doing the work again. Sigh. I cannot tell you in how many seasons of my life that phrase has come up. They both looked at me over the fire with empathy and likely some level of support burnout on their part, as they've heard this phrase once or twice from me before, particularly R, whom I have known almost my entire life. We have been friends since I was 14 years old. He looks across the fire at me and says, "Lindsay, are you ever not doing the work?" And I stopped and I thought about it for a minute and I, in true Lindsay form, got defensive. This tends to be a thing I do. I know, I'm working on it. I explained to him why the work was important and how I needed to keep working to make sure I was always like the best, most self-aware, most healed, most grateful, most grounded version of myself that I could be. And so he smiled and he started in on this really cool analogy. He said, okay, let's say you go to the gym because you want to be the strongest, healthiest, fittest version of yourself that you can be. You go and you lift the heaviest weights you can every day, and you go back and back again and again and again the next day, and you do it again and again and again. And you're working your muscles so hard in back-to-back intervals that they don't actually have a chance to recover and rebuild and grow after the hard work you had done from the day before. So it's actually not beneficial for you to be constantly, quote, doing the work. You need to give yourself a break and allow that work to sink in. I was sipping my jalapeno margarita, nibbling on chocolate and thinking. And I sat with this for a minute and I realized something. Once I learned how to do the work more effectively a few years ago, I really never took a break from it. I never took a break. I spent a lot of years of my life avoiding looking at the hard stuff, actively avoiding doing the personal work. But now I felt compelled to improve every day. Every minute was an opportunity for insight and personal development. I was like a crazed personal trainer for my emotions and behavior patterns. I hadn't given myself a hot minute to allow the work to integrate into my life, into my daily habits, into my thought patterns, into my heart. The work is an essential part of our growth and development as fully emotionally formed humans. And also, it's okay to stop and let it sink in once in a while. Build those emotional muscles. If you water a plant every day, and don't let the moisture do its job in the soil, you'll drown the poor plant eventually. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a chronic overwaterer as a plant mom, so I guess there might be a personality theme here. Never stop, never stopping. All that being said, I think I mentioned this before in another episode. I can't recall which one off the top of my head, but one of the most influential quotes in my life is this: "The unexamined life is not worth living." This was apparently spoken by Socrates around 400 BC. Smart guy. I love this. It reminds me that I want to examine my life, meaning my choices, my actions, my thoughts, my feelings, in order to ensure I'm doing it well and I'm doing it authentically. And I want to fine-tune the things that need a little bit more attention. In summary, I want to do the work. So what is the work? It's going to look different for everyone. It's so unique. These experiences are all so unique. My work is not going to look the same as your work, and that's okay. Now, I went to a source by Nicole LaPera. She's the holistic psychologist. For those of you who may know her by that name, that's her Instagram handle anyway. She wrote a book called How to Do the Work. So that's where I started. In her book, the work is defined as recognizing your patterns, healing from your past, and creating yourself. Those are pretty broad categories, so I'm going to break it down a little bit. Let's start with patterns. Our systems are designed to follow the same patterns they've always followed. These are well-worn neural pathways of thoughts and behaviors that feel safe because they're familiar. However, just because they're familiar doesn't mean they're always right. These can be the kind of deep-rooted patterns of trauma that result, for example, in someone leaving one abusive relationship and moving right into another very similar one. These patterns are what the body knows, and so we lean into them. One pattern I'm working on is the vicious cycle of the overshare followed closely by the vulnerability hangover. This is a deadly combo. When I have big feelings, the best way for me to process them is in the company of a trusted person. I need someone to witness with me. But sometimes when I ask for what I need and I take up space by being vulnerable with someone, I feel deep shame afterwards. So a couple months ago, I'm at school. I'm having a rough morning. I'm experiencing big feelings that I carried with me to work because you can't leave them at home because feelings don't work like that. And I'm having a hard time holding back tears in the middle of a classroom. So I go up to a lovely, trusted colleague and I say, "I can't talk about it right now, but today is hard and I need a hug." And she hugged me. It was so lovely to be seen and held in that way. And then the old pattern kicked in. I felt like I had taken up too much space. I felt too many feels. I was vulnerable. I had shown my soft underbelly to someone in our place of work, which felt like a massive weakness. Enter vulnerability hangover. I recognized my old pattern of having feelings, those feelings taking up space, and then experiencing shame about the space they took up. This pattern does not serve me well. So, with the recognition and understanding of the pattern I was stuck in, I got brave and I thanked the lovely colleague and friend who hugged me instead of apologizing for taking up space and apologizing for simply being a human. This was a great start to breaking the pattern, simply recognizing it and taking one small step toward rewiring the neural pathway that had me stuck in that loop. Okay, let's move on to healing from your past. This one's a little bit more complex. Well, it's a lot more complex. This can be any hurt you've incurred, a recent job loss, divorce, argument with a friend, a broken trust, a car accident, or it could be deep-seated trauma from a childhood wounding. Regardless of the source, some of the work is rooted in healing from these hurts. And healing looks really different for everyone. Maybe you run or go to the gym to work off your stress. Maybe you curl up on the couch and take care of your inner child for a weekend. Maybe you take yourself on a trip. Healing also has many stages. After a breakup, for example, I go through all manner of stages of healing. There's the fierce resiliency stage. This manifests as mantras like, I got this. I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need a partner. I have everything I need right here with my kids and my friendships. At this point, there's usually an influx of like positive intention cards posted around my house. Pinterest boards like explode with like positive affirmations. Okay, that's one stage. Then there's the replacement stage. This is where I start looking at home renovations, puppy adoption websites, vacations, something to fill the void of time and emotion that's been left by the relationship ending. Then I move into the sad stage. This is nostalgia, missing the person and their little habits. This is usually followed by a mad stage. This is when I curse under my breath at the most ridiculous things that I didn't like in my partner or deflecting my frustration onto them. Mad is actually often easier to feel and process than sad because it's a protective emotion. So the shift from sad to mad actually makes total sense to me. Healing from a slight hurt or a deeper, more intensive trauma can have many phases and stages, so be gentle with yourself through this process. Lastly, let's talk about creating yourself. I like this one because I live by the motto of you are the architect of your own life. We can keep on learning about ourselves and uncovering new and interesting layers of ourselves and creating ourselves until we are 100% of what we want to become. Creating yourself, to me, means becoming the version of yourself that you love the most authentically. In my own life, I have been putting the pieces of the Lindsay puzzle together for many years, probably 44 years, and finding out what makes me click, what makes me feel whole and complete and authentic. I recently discovered I like having houseplants. This is a new development. I discovered I love producing a podcast, something I never imagined would be part of the landscape of my life. I discovered that even though I'm an extrovert, I love quiet nights in by myself, so I carve out time for those. So as I gather all of these pieces of information about myself, I can use them to build the life I want. Be the architect of my own life. Think of it like Lego. You dig through the bin of Lego until you find the piece you want, and you add it to the tower. Again and again and again, you reach into the bin, you pick a piece, you add it to the tower, until you've created a beautiful, sturdy, creative, and unique masterpiece. Really, humans are like Lego, just with more complicated emotions. For me personally, the work usually starts with a healthy dose of self-reflection. It's all about peeking behind the curtain of my own behavior to figure out the motivation behind it. This can get ugly. It can be really hard to own up to the reasons why we behave or react the way we do. This has been a learning curve for me, a steep one throughout the years. For example, in a recent session with my amazing therapist, we got into a conversation about why people get so defensive. I told you this was something I was working on. It sparked a lively conversation and weeks of self-reflection about perfectionism and some people's inability to be viewed as fallible. I recognized in that conversation that being wrong meant exposing myself to potential ridicule, which I was unable to handle. So the only way to protect myself from criticism was to never, ever, 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 ever make a mistake. Easy, right? Yeah. So using baby steps, I started practicing owning my shit. An opportunity came along with a phone call from a friend. She had booked a trip, but she wasn't interested in a lot of people knowing about it. And I had accidentally let it slip to a mutual friend that she was going. And when she heard that I had mentioned it, she felt upset and betrayed. And she called me to say as much. And she was super brave. This was my chance. I was going to get to practice. So I tried something new. I didn't get defensive. I simply held space for her while she expressed her feelings. I waited until she was done telling me why she was feeling hurt. And afterwards, I apologized. I owned my error, and we discussed how I could fix this going forward. I didn't get defensive. And so by her being honest and me owning my error and my slip up, our friendship was able to move forward. Okay, so here you are. You're in the trenches. You're doing the work. You're digging in. How do you know the work is working? There's a few ways you can know. For me, I can watch the shift unfold almost objectively in how I respond and behave and react and move forward. I can often feel this in my body. There's a release of tightness in my chest when I'm my authentic self. I sleep better. I have a better appetite. I have more energy. I also see it in my relationships. When I am my most authentic self and the work is working, my relationships deepen. They become more rich. It takes a while for these things to show up, and it takes a while for you to start to recognize them too, right? Sometimes you have to do the work over and over and over to see the results. I've actually borrowed some imagery from my friend's therapist from years ago. It's a spiral. It's kind of picture like a snail shell. It's tight in the center and it grows outward, around and around. It gets bigger and bigger. The center of the spiral is the start of the growth before the work. Maybe it's an old pattern, a first experience with a new challenge, a new hurt or wounding. And at the start, you have no experience. You've never done the work. It's new and fresh. And that's at the center of the spiral. But then you survive it, you live through it, and you learn some things, and you do the work, and you experience personal growth, and you go around the spiral one loop. Not just around, but outwards too. So then, when this experience comes up for you again, or you come up against that old pattern again, you're not starting from the beginning. You have been here already. This is not new news. You have one entire cycle of experience, work, growth under your belt already. As an example, let's take people pleasing. You say yes to a project at work that you simply cannot take on, but you want to look competent and capable. So at the expense of your mental health, you say yes again and again and again to things you don't have time for. This is not working for you. So you decide to make a small change and say no to one thing. That's you at the center of the spiral, trying something different. And then take stock. How did that feel? Did you benefit from that change in your pattern? Did the world crumble because you didn't offer to organize the Friday snack club in the staff room? You have had one go around on the spiral. Okay, so a few weeks later, another opportunity comes up for you to set a boundary at work, but now it's not as scary because you're not at the starting line. You've already been here. You have the experience. You have some practice with this. You have some tools to manage this change. So you say no to something bigger that feels a little bit outside of your wheelhouse, but you've used the tools from the first iteration to inform your second trial of breaking your people-pleasing patterns. So you grow and you change and you travel one more cycle outwards. Each opportunity you have to travel outward on the spiral and practice that new thing makes you more capable, gives you more tools to manage that particular issue or pattern. This is the work working. This is the proof. I actually have this spiral tattooed on my left forearm to remind me each day that as I come up against things that seem hard or perhaps a new challenge, chances are I've already been there. I've done that. And I have some tools. I'm probably already a few cycles out on the spiral. And I can say, I have experience here. I got this. The work is working. This is one of my favorite sayings. It's so celebratory and it's so affirming. All right, here's another problem. What happens when you're just tired and you don't want to do the work anymore? Like a toddler, sometimes I throw a little tantrum and I whine to my friends, I don't want to do more work. that is probably a sign that you've overworked those muscles and you need to take a break. So after that conversation by the fire with my friends, I decided to take a break from the work. I spent an entire season just doing life as simply and easily and authentically and joyfully as I could. I took a pause on therapy, I put the self-help books on the shelf, and I just went out in the world and I had fun. I let the work wait for a bit. Later on that year, I picked it back up. I went back, chatted with my therapist, I started a new spiritual practice, I bought a book on attachment theory, I set some goals, and I did some more work. And because I was rested, I was actually more ready for it. My heart was open. I was emotionally prepared to look behind the curtain once more. The break was super refreshing, and the work that came afterwards was even more effective. Finally, I want to sum this all up with the why. Why bother doing the work? It's hard. And it's painful. It's tiring. It forces us to look at things we probably don't really want to examine. But let's look at it this way. If we don't do the work, we don't heal, we don't break patterns, and we don't create ourselves. We will just continue to carry these things into our next job, our next friendship, our next relationship, our next parenting challenge. The why is simple because you only get to do this once on this earth in this life. So let's do it the best, most examined, most authentic way that we can. Okay, welcome to the Stacks. Obviously, I'm going to recommend that you read How to Do the Work by Nicole LePera. You can also follow her on Instagram. She's the holistic psychologist there. There's actually also, I found a couple days ago, there's workbooks out there that help guide you on your personal journey into doing the work to do the work. Therapy in a Nutshell is a YouTube channel with Emma McAdam. It's chock-a-block full of amazing content to help with just about anything you could ever imagine in any area of your emotional life that might need work. She also hosts a podcast, and it's also named Therapy in a Nutshell. This week, in the Gratitude Minute, I feel grateful for the time and space I have to actually do the work in my safe and cozy home with safe people as my witnesses, and you know who you are. I also want to thank Em, who was that gracious coworker who generously gave me the hug I needed right when I needed it. Take care of yourself, everyone. Thanks for joining me. And when the work gets hard and you throw a toddler tantrum about it, you can always turn your face toward the sun and just take a little break.